And the Supreme Court has cleared the way for Texas to use its newly redrawn congressional map this November. In a 6-3 decision, the justices struck down a lower court's ruling that blocked the state from using the map in these upcoming midterms. The new congressional lines could flip 5 Democratic U.S. seats to Republicans. Actually, the Texas House Minority Leader released a statement on behalf of the state's House Democratic Caucus, arguing the Supreme Court did not protect the Constitution. Instead, it protected a, quote, racist map, they say, that stole seats and weakened Black and Latino voting power. That decision comes as Florida makes its own moves. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis sharing his proposal to redraw the state's congressional districts, a move that could give Republicans as many as 4 new seats in Congress. DeSantis unveiled his new map yesterday, part of a national redistricting fight President Trump and Republicans kicked off last year in an effort to improve Republican chances of holding on to power in November, which are under threat, according to recent polling. The map shows in Florida 4 blue districts for Democrats and 24 red for Republicans, up from 20 Republican in Florida's current delegation. The state's constitution bans intentionally drawing maps, though, to benefit either party, and Democratic and liberal groups say they plan to sue if these maps are passed. The legislature will convene in a special session today to consider the proposal. Want to bring in White House reporter for Axios, Mark Caputo. Mark, no one knows Florida better, so let's start right there. Talk us through this map and the changes that DeSantis is proposing, and also the way that he might have left himself open to early criticism based on maps that he himself sent out.
DeSantis has just basically decided that the voter-approved Fair Districts Amendment, which bans intentional partisan gerrymandering, that was approved by 63% of voters in 2010, is basically void in entirety. The heart of his argument is that the amendment, in addition to banning partisan gerrymandering, intentional ones, also guides legislators and instructs them not to reduce minority access seats. And those were essentially crafted to comport with the Voting Rights Act. However, there's a Voting Rights Act challenge that had been in front of the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, hasn't been ruled on yet. And DeSantis said it will be ruled on. These minority access seats do not comport with the 14th Amendment of the Constitution and are going to be canceled. And therefore, all of Florida's Fair Districts Amendment, its guidelines that were passed by voters for drawing districts in the reapportionment process are null and void, and therefore they need to be changed. Now, DeSantis has had that opinion to a degree at one point or another. What's unique here is that he only decided to really embark on this process once Donald Trump said, hey, I need more Republican seats drawn. He made that announcement, the president did last year. And then DeSantis essentially waited, and he waited until now to do it. And one of the reasons, according to people who are familiar with his thinking and have observed the process and are involved in redistricting, is that by waiting almost until the last minute here, it helps ensure that the clock could run out on a Democratic challenge and make the passage of this map more easy, because there's essentially 2 issues here that Democrats are going to attack it on. One is sort of reducing at least 1 or 2 of these minority access seats or affecting them. And then secondly, and perhaps primarily in the state of Florida, the fact that this does appear to be intentional, or I can't see how it's not intentional, partisan gerrymandering, and that takes a while to prove. And by having this map pass in April, it sort of runs out the clock and makes that challenge more difficult.
Yeah, I mean, how quickly do you think that this ultimately moves? It kind of sounds like the run out the clock method is going to be the thing that helps it succeed. But what's the timeline?
Well, the timeline is multiple lawsuits, but there's essentially sort of 3 aspects to this that DeSantis is looking at. Like, overall, there is something called the Purcell Principle, and it's based on the 2006 U.S. Supreme Court case that says, hey, courts, you can't interfere with elections and election-related matters passed by legislatures that are too close to an election. So that's number 1, Purcell. Number 2, because this is drafted by the governor's office, he's going to argue, as he did in 2022 when he did a similar thing, but not to this degree, that he has executive privilege. It's more of a federal argument, but he's going to try it in state court. And traveling with that is something called the Apex Doctrine, which essentially says if you wind up suing the governor's office in this case, you can't just go right to the top as chief of staff or to the governor, you have to start at the lower level. That burns time moving through that process. And the third thing is the fact that this was done in secret. And because it was done in secret, it's really hard to figure out who made the maps, what the record is, so that you could prove that this was intentional gerrymandering. All that just sort of grinds clock and sort of runs out time.
So we're going to be watching that as it unfolds. We've seen this Texas to California to Indiana where it failed, but then Virginia, North Carolina. I mean, across the map, we have seen voters see their district lines changed months before they head to the polls. It's going to lead to confusion, but we're also seeing that it's going to lead to each state partisanly gerrymandering, frankly, in the way in which they're trying to. White House reporter for Axios, Mark Caputo, walking us through all of it. Appreciate you always.
Thank you much.
Still ahead for